Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Humanity as Organism Thrives Convergence Room during Peace Week, which has been absolutely amazing. This is a discussion about sacred healing, and we welcome all of you in the audience. And it's really a blessing to have this discussion with Dr. Tom Acklin and with Tara DeNuccio and myself, and we welcome any comments, any questions during the discussion about sacred healing. If you'd like to comment, either comment in the chat or raise your hand and we'll be able to unmute you. We welcome everyone to the discussion. So I think we can start, and maybe Tara, if I can introduce you first, because you haven't been introduced. So I will just pull up your bio. Give me a second. All right. And Tara, I love how you describe yourself, a spirit, soul, human. Tara is ever at the edges of exploring and experiencing her true nature in communion with all of life. In that recognition, the various identities and endeavors of her life, personal and professional, are responses to life's invitation. Receive and offer yourself to life wholeheartedly. And over the last 20 years, Tara has practiced as an integral and somatic coach with attention on embodied presence, spiritual experience and consciousness, communication and interpersonal dynamics, trauma healing, experiential transformation, adult development, and deep time wisdom, supported by practices in meditation, yoga, nutritional, and intuitive healing arts. So that's a bit about Tara. Welcome.
Thank you. Really happy to be here with all of you.
And of course, all of you know Dr. Tom Acklin from the previous discussion, and functional medicine doctor specializing in brain gut health, microbiome, cancer, autoimmune disease, and also regenerative neurologist, and so many other things, meditation facilitator. So shall we start?
Looking forward to it.
And I guess the first question is, a lot of people here may be wondering, what is sacred healing? And if we can just presence that idea, each of us, with what sacred healing means to us, so that everyone can get a picture and just be with the discussion. Tara, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I'm going to just say that sacred healing for me is just what's happening here right now on a really essential level. And I made some preparatory notes and wanting to come here and speak into this space and offer something of meaning. And I think it's, at the end of the day, it's to discard any of that preparation and to really feel what's here right now. So I want to say that sacred healing, I'm struck by, coming from Tom's session and everything that happened there. To me, sacred healing is what is happening right now. So if we can even feel into how that registers in our own bodies and beings, I want to just give that a little space, like just for 3 breaths. And then we can, when we're in the interior, which I feel that often we, and I certainly in my life, have been alienated from, the life that is moving in and through and as us, when we can drop below the level of thought and into really the vibrance of what has us here, the mystery of what has us here, the life, the creativity that has us here, I think we're getting closer to coming to understand individually and collectively what sacred healing is about, or where it's sourced from. And then we can go maybe to the looking at the words. You know, sacred is something that we give reverence to, that we see as beyond our rational or our finite temporal self, but that we're tapping into something that is eternal, that's universal. There's an intelligence, there's a reverence to knowing that there's a mystery in what this is pointing to. And then when we combine that with healing, I look at healing as a process. It's not something to do, but it's something to encounter. It's something to let ourselves be taken into. And often that healing that we're seeking for whatever is out of balance or is in dis-ease, we're looking at that as a process that wants to get us to some destination. And I have been humbled and transformed in my life. And I came from mainstream medicine. I was a nurse. So the very system that had really trained in me this idea that the answer could be found, you know, sort of out there and secured by mainstream medicine, which has so much to offer us. It was disrupted when I came upon illness that wasn't able to find its answer through those channels. And there was a humbling experience, because it brought me to something that brought me much more into the intimacy of myself and myself as life and the larger. So I want to just say that healing, sacred healing, to me, there's a reverence, it's a relationship with self and with all of life, and with the mystery and the creativity and the intelligence that is beyond what I will ever be able to name as something. And I'm very much a part of that intelligence that actually orients itself toward wholeness. So sacred healing to me is a movement, it's a process, it's a holding of what is already whole, but has in some ways become alienated or fragmented. And I'm going to pause right there.
That's beautiful. Tom, I just know you want to speak into that. I can see it.
I really resonate with that, Tara. I resonate with the spontaneous. There's a wisdom in being present, which I echo your concerns too. Your take on allopathic medicine doesn't take off the table the import of having an emergency intervention, right? Thank God we have that. But maybe if I could start with the converse of sacred healing, because everything you spoke to brilliantly is where that's not present. We have whatever the opposite of sacred healing is, painful unhealing, right? Or profane destroying, something like that. I wrote down earlier, the profound failure of the blank to function at the speed of blank. And I have several different categories that one of my favorites, the profound failure of the mind to function at the speed of the heart, right? The profound failure of the body to function at the speed of the inflammation, as we were pointing to before. The profound failure of my trust to function at the speed of your trust in an interpersonal relationship. All right, we have all these places where we have the mismatch. I also wrote the profound failure of the computer to function at the speed of the human, right? where our machines don't function at our intention. So I think that's, I would say sacred healing is something like getting close to that trust point that Tara was talking about, that metaphysical appreciation that is way more than the mechanics of my understanding, and getting there and knowing, and in those spaces, quantum physics has shown this, and metaphysicians have spoken this for a long time. In those spaces where there is coherence with our reality of the field of possibilities, cancer disappears and pathologies disappear. And I actually found something else I wrote about 10 years ago this morning that maybe I'll wait on that. I'll wait on that. But this idea that we are about to be given the greatest gift of our lifetime, right? Every cancer survivor will tell you that he or she has learned from the experience, right? It's best thing that ever happened to me. Maybe that's a little hyperbolic, but many who come through, let's put it that way, many who come through know that just like many diseases, as we step into a place where some people break a bone and they realize, wow, I really learned something. When we're in a space where we can take the silver lining, it's always there, right? If we try to protect the machine and maintain the circumstance and like that's protect the status quo, we always lose. That's the rigidity. When we're in a space of trust, that it's a physiologic reality, and it's an emotional reality, it's a psychological reality, and it's a spiritual reality. And I think that's the arena of sacred food, where you can't not make a good choice in that space. You might have a little bit of a question mark, say, what, why am I doing that? That doesn't seem right. But in that space where that metaphysical trust has been made, and that sort of mind-body integrity exists, we are always brought to the place of the universe that is so much wiser than we will ever understand mechanically. Yeah.
Well, before I respond, I just want to read Dr. Henrietta in the chat was responding to you, Tom. That is true of all insights we encounter, isn't it? The emotional issues we just came through, the potential disappointing experience that brings such depth and reforming of our identity and our self-awareness, which I think it's such a huge topic, right?
Right on. Yeah. That's the whole game. That's what we're doing here.
Well, I think, like both of you, being of a similar mindset, I do believe healing is a natural life process. I describe myself as a healing breakthrough coach, and I'm an Akashic Records reader and a yoga instructor too. And when I do any of the healing modalities, I grew up in medicine. So my dad was a conventional doctor and my mom's a nurse. She's and I think that, and my sister went through a healing journey. So coming from that side to all of us just wanting to help people, you get to a point where it's your whole definition of healing changes, and then healing becomes undefined. And at this point in my life, healing is what are we healing to? It's our next evolutionary step. We're healing to our next level. We're never not healing. Healing is just an ongoing process. And I just quickly want to add to that. So Tom, when you were speaking about how what people have said when they've had cancer, that a lot of times I've said, well, this was a gift. So in 2013, I had a fibroadenoma in my breast, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a benign growth. And my response to it, eventually, when I did get the test, an excision had to be done. And I used my mind. What I realized was that I wasn't in a place where I was ready to heal. It had a message. It had this message for me where I had to ask myself some questions. The first one being, how does someone 4'11" have a growth in their breast the size of a lemon and not notice it, or at least notice it, but try and explain it away? You know, it could be this, could be that, whatever. And that was the first eye-opening question where I realized I wasn't giving attention to self. And it did become a gift. My book got birthed from it. You know, it's taught me so much. I couldn't have gotten to my present definition of healing if it wasn't for that. And to me, just that whole journey has been what sacred healing is. And I'm not afraid anymore. At one stage I was, and I'm not. And I realized, well, the message was, I have gratitude because of where I am and what it's taught me, and my communion with the thing that was supposed to be something abnormal. So that's my definition of sacred healing.
I so love what you're saying, Hasina, in that what you're speaking about in terms of these, what feel like alien or unwanted occurrences in our body, are really expressions. The body is, you know, it's something's being expressed through the body. So, you know, it would be like if we felt hunger pains, we wouldn't be trying to send those off somewhere else. But we're attuned to what that expression is orienting us to. And in illness, because it's unwanted, and we have this idea of that Tom talked about before, this idea with the quote with Thich Nhat Hanh, this idea that permanence or impermanence, we're in a wrestling match with that. And if we could actually come into a relationship with whatever the expression is, we would see that it's orienting us towards something that's trying to be spoken, trying to be released, and trying to move us to this next level. So I really appreciating your personal example.
And please, if anyone would like to contribute, just contribute in the chat or raise your hand, because we're happy to interact here and just add to the discussion. Yeah.
And I want to just invite too in the chat that anyone that wants to include, this does not have to be an ailment or a malady in terms of an illness. There is imbalance and something that wants to be healed that maybe doesn't show up on a physical level. So on all of the levels that we can feel that something wants attention and wants healing, that we all include that and connect with that. What is it that wants to be or is seeking to be healed?
I think a big piece of the healing is that next version, right? We've got a lot of paradigms that point to put the body back to how it was yesterday, and that's not healing. You know, I love saying to people, you can take the tumor out of the body, but you haven't healed the cancer. You've taken away the evidence of the cancer, right? And that both of you are pointing to these dynamics of becoming and evolving and forwarding. And if we're not doing that, if we're not taking care of damage, not taking care of interface, we're not living life. We're not in the dynamics of the healing life force. So it's almost like, you know, we've sort of defaulted with this proprietary notion that healing is for the pharmaceutical companies and like that to turn off the messages, as Tara was saying, right? And I think this is an important conversation because we can begin to recontextualize the way the rest of the world talks about healing. And healers on this planet have talked like this forever and ever and ever. And only in the West, in recent centuries, have we codified, right? And I sometimes can go down the path of talking about it, a conspiracy theory to limit the power of the word, right? But if at one point, and I would suggest that many healers around the world know this, the power of healing is an instantaneously transformational dynamic, instantaneous, right? With nothing to worry about and nothing to blah, 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 and cancer disappears. That's what acupuncturists speak that language, spiritualists, yoga teachers speak that language, Ayurvedic practitioners speak that language, and metaphysicians of all kinds, right? And but we don't hear it here, so we are sheltered from that whole idea.
Well, I'd like to open that up, Tom, when you're talking about that, making the distinction between cure and healing. So when you just said it happens in an instant, you're speaking about healing, not purely the clearing of the cancer or its origins to recur. You're talking about something that's happening on multiple levels. Is that right? And then can you maybe say a little bit, because I one of the things that I'm caring of is that people not actually be in self-blame that they haven't actually aligned with a field that gives them that spontaneous healing. I think it negates some of what is important for us to consider as maybe like a soul journey, that while that is in fact true and possible, it may not be for every person's course in their lifetime. And so I want to just look at the difference maybe between healing and how that happens on multiple levels, and then cure, which happens more in people's minds on the level of eliminating whatever this unwanted illness is.
Well said, got it. Why don't we hear Dana's question and see if maybe we can I have a couple of thoughts on what you just said, Tara, but we can foot this conversation in her comments.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
No, I just thought I might contribute because I'm a healing practitioner. I do healing work, and I have some perspectives just from my own experience of sacred healing, and they do tie into some of the questions that were just being raised. And from my perspective, well, the way that I practice healing is essentially being a conduit to energy from source. And I ask that come through and work for the person. The phrase that I use is their highest wholeness, healing, and continued evolution. That's the prayer that I say at the beginning of my healing. And I also ask for help from a variety of divine sources, because that's the other thing. I believe that help is always available. Divine help is always available. And I think that's what makes healing sacred. And in a way, without that divine help, it just would not be the same depth and breadth of what can happen in the healing process. And the phrase, a person's highest wholeness healing, I got that from Doc Childrey, who was the founder of the HeartMath Institute, where I used to be a researcher. I was a researcher at HeartMath for 12 years. And I knew Doc personally and worked with him on a personal level. And I loved that phrase about highest wholeness healing, because the question that Tara was just asking about, well, sometimes it's their journey to maybe not be healed from that physical ailment right away, or for something to keep playing out, or like in my case, sometimes, people will come to my sessions. I also combine them with Hawaiian massage and body work. And, they'll be like, oh, my back hurts or something. But then the real highest wholeness healing that the person's higher self knows, and I don't know, and they don't know, not from the mind level, that the real highest wholeness healing might be some completely other plane, like something on the emotional level or something from another existence, or they might receive like a message from a being on the other side, or an ancestor, or something. And so that's why I always leave that. I love how that intention leaves it open, that everyone is on their personal healing journey, and the higher self knows like exactly the right divine timing for what needs to shift, or what can shift, and what still needs growth and learning, or other unfoldment, perhaps before something can shift. And I guess a final piece that I could add is, it's also been mentioned in the discussion, the idea of unconditional acceptance, unconditional love and acceptance for something exactly as it is, I find is very like a magical ingredient, that, because until something feels like fully heard, fully seen, fully accepted, um, only then can it begin to like melt and be modulated and be responsive to, a next level of expression. So I try to incorporate that attitude of like compassion and unconditional acceptance of whatever it is that a person brings to a healing request or session. And I find that in itself is a very important just energy to have. And one other thing that my Lomi Lomi teacher in Hawaii, Harry Uhana Jim, he's an amazing being. He used to say that Lomi Lomi is 99% entertainment and 1% God. And meaning that you can just be there on the table receiving this beautiful massage and, having a nice experience and kind of being entertained. But then that one moment where like a miracle can happen, and the healing practitioner helps to create the space for that miracle to happen, for that divine grace to be infused, and for a true transformation to happen. Like that's what we're really after. And even if it has to be 99% sort of having a nice experience, but creating that space for the divine grace, that miracle, the 1% God, like then that is more than enough. So some stream of consciousness perspectives from my own
That's
experience.
great. Well, and I think those two things go together. If I can ramble on about this for a second, the way it is, one of the reasons I love mirror exercises and transparency and helping people journal is because the way it is God. Yeah. And that's one of the beautiful contexts this whole week, is hearing different practitioners talk, not just healer type practitioners, but we're craving that right now socially. We're craving that globally. We're craving transparency and being with people who are telling the truth. Who cares what the truth is? I don't care if, I don't care what side of the platform you're on. If you're not telling me the truth, we're not going to get anywhere, right? And if we can't look in the mirror and be in awe, as you said, of the whole thing, then any solution I come up with this is working inside a game that there's a couple cards missing, right? If I don't look clearly and say this whole thing is God, all of it, right, the hatred, the anger, right? And so when you're talking about compassionately being with the whole situation, that's just the feeling I had was, I think it's one of the greatest blessings we can bring to each other is just be with the whole game. You gotta be with the whole thing. I'd be curious to talk with you offline too about heart math. I actually just heard, Dispenza works real closely with heart math and Doc, and he was describing this morning in a video that Hasina sent me actually, and he said if we're with the field and we're with an emotional understanding of the field, we're with our brain, which is an electrical organs, and it's an electrical interface with the omnipresence, with the omniscience, and the pluripotentiality of what there is from which to create, like that. And then the heart is magnetic. He said you can't create, matter to matter is slow motion. You can't create matter to matter. If you can create electric to magnetic, and that's that coherence. I don't speak that language deeply, but I've, over the past couple of years, I've started to pay attention to it. Do you have anything to say about that?
Oh,
Well, I was talking to Dana, but anybody.
okay, I'll just unmute Dana quickly. Shamima, can you please?
Or she might, but we could maybe move on from that whole thing. Maybe that's just sort of.
It was interesting. I heard you
context.
speak about coherence earlier when you mentioned that. I immediately, thought about HeartMath's work that you said when all is in coherence, that's when we can have like a healing response. And I do believe, and I've done a lot of research of some of the original research on the state of coherence and defining it and conceptualizing it. That's part of what I was involved in during the years that I was at HeartMath, meaning the coherence of the heart that then creates coherence through the entire body. And that really is a very healing state. That's a state in which healing and regeneration happen naturally. So I think, and it's really love, love and positive emotions that are the doorways to coherence. So I love that, coherence is a signature of love, and it's love that we've been asked to access by every spiritual tradition and religion that's ever existed. And there's really a true science of that. In relation to Joe Dispenza, I'm not as familiar with how he, but I'm curious though about this thing you're talking about, the electric and magnetic interaction. I'd be curious to talk more with you about that as well, because it sounds interesting. I know he works a lot with coherence in healing and in groups, and it's been very powerful.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you my flavor of something that I created. We can maybe bring it back around. In Hasina's Akashic Records reading, what came out as the closing idea earlier was Earth is love and love is shelter. And since today's core value is shelter, right? A core need of the 7 core needs, today's is shelter. And we were talking about physical structure, and not just structure of the places we live, but the structure of cells, the structure of tissues, et cetera, et cetera. And what came out in her reading was Earth is love and love is shelter. And the way you're describing love as an electromagnetic, that is, for me, the distinction. And I think this goes back to answer your question earlier, Tara, too. The difference between healing and cure. Cure is a matter to matter, right? We want to see a physical, 3-dimensional, tangible shift. That's not reality, and it's not love. Love is 5th dimensional. It's higher dimensional, multi-dimensional, and translates where there is coherence and attention, and we can use this mechanism. We can put a quote 3-dimensional cure. Does that land? I'll give you a couple of different examples, because I have 4 have 4 silos that I can play with this in. So we speak energy to matter. What is the transformation? What is the transformation machinery of energy to matter, or call it spirit to matter? I'll call it Holy Spirit for lack of a better thing, and that can mean anything. Whatever your version of Holy Spirit is, it could be Kundalini, it could be the etheric forces, it could be God, et cetera, et cetera. Just like motion determines muscle, right? We want to exercise, the body will resculpt itself, determine muscle. The interface there, for me, is fascia, and a dynamic fascia, which is reflective of the microbiome. And so this was me sort of playing with the idea that fascia is the God interface in the body. If there is a, not quite matter, not quite energy, something, it's the electrical ethereality of ever-changing fascia, right? It's that. And same thing in the microbiome. Food to microbiome, food to bacteria. Food determines bacteria with the interface of mucin. In the magic mucin layer, there's something, call it God particle-ish or Holy Spirit-ish, right? That is the translation force. And then at the personal level, where thought becomes emotion, we have thoughts, they're not yet tangibilized. Then all of a sudden we have an emotion which corporealizes itself and brings itself into 3 dimensions. And my interface mechanism there was something that I call receptivity. I don't have a word for it yet, or equipoise, our equipoise stability. And it's that sense of pause in what would be an inflammatory emotional response already. As you were pointing to earlier, call a spade. Look at the whole game, right? Watch the whole of the thing. And for me, in the nervous system, that's autonomic balance. So if we have very nice autonomic integrity, which is, for people who don't know, the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, your fight or flight versus your rest and relax. That's the autonomic nervous system. And autonomic nervous system is very, very closely tied to microbiome integrity. So where there's a dysbiosis, a destruction of that, we've destroyed that sort of equipoise, if you will. So all of those are sort of translators or mediators, right? Those 4 examples would be mediators in 4 different silos. But I think that speaks to what you were pointing to before, the difference between cure and healing. And they certainly belong in the same conversation, but let's not pretend that one is the other. One is, energy, one is matter, or one is, there's an interface, and it's got something way more to do with biochemistry and our understanding of physiology than we'll probably ever know. Right? There's a God particle in there.
Yes, there is. I'm just reading in the chat, and I'd like to read this healing. Dr. Brittany Anderson is also on the call. She's a chiropractor here in South Africa, and I love how she sees healing. And I was busy just listening to what you were saying, Tom. And she says, I think sacred healing occurs when the individual's consciousness comes into alignment with the innate ability and intelligence of the individual to heal. So the healing occurs when we, just give me a second to sort of, when we see what the symptom is mirroring that we are not acknowledging in our lives. This way we may be a conduit for energy to flow and to heal. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Because nature doesn't make mistakes. The thing that's happening is, quote, proper, right? And the only question is, how did it get here? What instigated it? What are we going to do about it?
Alexandra, did you have your hand up before? I just want to make sure if you did that you have time to speak. Oh, she's muted. Not
Oh,
able to unmute.
can you just unmute Alexandra? Okay,
Should be.
yeah.
Hi there. I spontaneously became a healer when my ex got himself into an accident and totaled a Porsche, and he had bifurcated laceration of the spleen, and the surgeon wanted to take it out, and I said, you can't take it out. He needs his spleen. He has blood disease from having grown up in a third world country, and I'll heal him. And I didn't even know what I was saying out of my mouth. This was like 35 years ago. There were no healers in America. There was no meditation in the United States, nothing. And the doctor looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, just let me do it. And he was unconscious. He was in a coma. And the doctor said, okay, I'm going to give you all my phone numbers. And when he turns green from the poisons in his spleen, call me and we'll get somebody in here to get his spleen out. And so I said, okay. So I put my hands on him and I just brought light down from my head into my hands all night long. And in the morning, the doctor came in and said, I can't believe I let you talk me into that. We're taking him into surgery right now. So they took him, they did an MRI. They said, there's a mistake. We're going to do it again. They came back. They said, he's completely healed. You can take him home. Right? And I didn't even know what I was doing. So I then cured myself of cancer a couple of times just by meditating, just bringing light in, because the light is intelligent, right? And the light knows what to do. So I think the light is like electrical and our emotions are magnetic. And right now I've been trying to heal my lungs, which I've really struggled with doing. I've been working on it now for a couple of years, and it's been very difficult. And I probably have some emotional block in my magnetic field that I haven't been willing to look at, or that I haven't been willing to heal, or something. There's, but it's difficult to heal the lungs. I know my guru took her a year to heal her lungs, and she's a guru and she's in Samadhi and I'm not. So I'm working on it, but I just wanted to offer that because I think, we have light, and I think the light heals by quantum entanglement, which is why distance doesn't matter, because the quantum entanglement allows the molecule to recognize itself no matter how far away it is. So that was my small contribution. Thank you. If anybody
May I ask you a
novel,
question?
Sure.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful sharing of what your experience was and has been. I'm struck by you not knowing what you were doing, which is all of the knowing that isn't a separate you happening through you. But I'm curious, as you healed your husband, did you come away with any connection to what that experience actually was healing or healed in you?
No, actually, when I had cancer, I did come away with why I had cancer and why it was healed. But what happened with my husband, probably, like I had a certain amount of respect for the medical field and had intended myself to go to medical school like Tom, which is why I know Tom. I wanted to go into neurosurgery. I had a traumatic incident that didn't allow me to go to med school, but it probably allowed me to completely question all the structures of what is and give me an independent outlook on life and say, you can self-direct and you don't have to listen to the authorities that are there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I'm so struck by, is that in the work with your husband that came so purely through you, that you said, I can heal him, and you didn't recognize sort of those as your own words, just how preparatory that was for your own healing with yourself. Yeah, that struck me. So I wasn't sure what your connection
Actually,
was to
I
that.
healed
Thank
myself
you.
first. I healed myself first. Now that I look back
Oh,
the timeline on the chronology,
very
I
interesting.
I was diagnosed with cancer and given 6 months to live. And I went in search of a mind-body doctor, and there was one guy in the DC area, Elliot Dasher, who had come out of Harvard. And he said, meditate. I was his very first patient. And he said, and I said, crazy things happen when I meditate. Like, things happened really fast when I started meditating, like light exploded in my head and, shit happened. And I stopped because I thought I was crazy, right? I thought I'm insane and I'm not doing this meditation shit anymore, right? And then he said, meditate. And I said, well, crazy shit happens. And he said, well, you can have crazy shit or you can die. What would you like? And I thought, okay, we'll go with crazy shit. He didn't put it quite so prosaically, right? That's my own.
Oh, thanks. That additional detail is really helpful, because there's a process that's happening and you kept consenting to it. So
Right.
It's really lovely.
Right. That's kind of, I was just paying attention to my own intuition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great question, Tara, and it just brings a reminder that we can all always walk with an eye open to all of the linear conversations. Like we were trained as scientists and logisticians, and back in the dark ages, and this is a new era, and we're still, some of us more than others are still handcuffed by Darwinian thinking and Newtonian physics, right? And Newtonian explanations for things. And I think we're all pretty good at having, am I still here?
Yes, you're still here.
I'm having some strange little flips. Anyway, so just a reminder to everybody, we all get to walk around and go, is that really real? Is that, 99% of our thoughts are just so habituated. We're so addicted to them that we don't even question them anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that's such an important point. How can we be more conscious? And Tara, I know when we were discussing this particular session and how it was going to go, and Tom, like you said, it never goes the way you think. But Tara, you had mentioned, well, a great question is what gets in the way of the healing. Mm-hmm. And when we can consciously get to that place where we're asking those questions, and not just, in other words, where we're allowing our consciousness, allowing our connection instead of our dysbiosis from our inner voice. When we can just allow that, then we're able to get to a place where the healing can occur, and whether it occurs by us just naturally knowing what the next step is, or whether it occurs just like this, it really doesn't matter. But we know we have this inner voice that tells us. And then sometimes we start playing mind games because we're listening to the white noise. So it's just a question of allowing that connection, I guess. I'm looking at the time, and thank you for all the comments on the chat. I am definitely reading them. My timekeeper, Shamima, is saying there are 2 minutes left. So if anyone wants to ask perhaps a last question, please. Oh, okay, Dr. Henrietta, let me bring you in, and let us, Shamima, please. Right, great.
This is such a beautiful conversation. I always love the variability of healing options and how people find themselves in situations that brings out exactly what they need, no matter how long it takes, right? It is just so beautiful. For those who don't know me, I'm a naturopathic doctor, and over time I have realized to this conversation and that there is a cellular memory of emotional or maybe even spiritual trauma, something that is stuck in the body in a way and that isn't easily healed. And in the quantum environment we're entering into, I mean, yes, we're headed for fifth dimensional bits, but we don't know how much we have to finish or heal here before we are actually able to enter into that space. I see, Tara, that you agree with that. Many of you have spoken about the physical issues that have been healed, and I think that is really beautiful. There's a practice that I do that I find very helpful, and if anyone would like to know more, please get in touch with me. It is that I look at the body, and then whatever is in the present moment, that I ask, where in the body is this felt, right? Now, somebody can have breast cancer and feel it in their knees. It doesn't matter, right? Because there are aspects of the inner child hiding in there who have not been heard. And those aspects I call orphans. So just to add to this conversation, I find in my 25-year private practice that it is essential that there is some connection between the intention of healing and how the body experiences, not just a diagnosis or a place where we're supposedly deficient or we don't have enough of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I mean, what you're saying
work...
to me, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's so powerful because you're talking about transgenerational like impacts and imprints. Yeah. And what is really strongly coming through is that what you're pointing to is healing the past in the present to release the future. So there's a moving back and forward in time, all happening in the eternal moment.
It is sometimes deeply related to ancestral trauma, that is true. And I also do something called body codes that addresses that beautifully. And the beauty of that is that when you see ancestral work being done with someone in the chair, what you end up finding is that there is such a release. I mean, the energy that is felt when there is a release across generations, it's unbelievably powerful, whether it's miasms or inherited issues. Anyway, I end here. I know we're at the end of the... Thank you, Tara. Maybe we can have more conversations. That'd be great. Maybe Hasina will connect us with our contact information.
Can everyone, Tara, Tom, and Henrietta as well, just put your emails in the chat, please? And I'm just, if anyone wants to, if anyone wants more of these kinds of conversations, please put your emails in the chat. If you're watching this, just, yeah, thank you, Dana. We can connect all of it, and we can have more conversations like these. And thank you so much. We're reaching the end, and we're just going to have a break before the next session. Awesome. Thank you for all the comments and all the email addresses. Yes. So Tara is actually going to, sorry, Tom, do you want to go ahead?
Oh,